Hi, this is Londa. Join me as I show you how I created this great pullover top using a sweatshirt and a t-shirt. It's super quick and super easy. Let's get started. To begin with, you want to use the largest sweatshirt and the largest t-shirt that you can find that coordinate. Why big? Because you want as much fabric as possible to work with. Does that make sense? It does to me. I have made oodles and oodles of sweatshirt jackets. The main objection that most people have to the genre of sweatshirt jackets is that they still feel like a sloppy sweatshirt. Well, if you follow along with these directions, you'll see how we avoid that by recutting the sweatshirt with armholes and a sleeve cap. You can see also in this picture um, up on the wall here at the retreat center, this printout of an idea that I had seen on Pinterest. So this was my inspiration picture. The t-shirt also, you want it to be just as big as possible. The bottom portion of the t-shirt is going to become your collar, and we're using a short sleeve t-shirt for this project. Those lower edges of the sleeves will become the cuffs on your pullover top. Here you can see that I have laid the pattern piece for the front in order to get my armhole there onto this sweatshirt that I had previously started working on years ago, and then it got put aside for one reason or another. That's why the side seams are already sewn. As you follow along with the directions, your side seams would not be sewn at this point. You can see the download directions right here. This is where I'm giving you this $4 pattern absolutely free with this new E-class, this pullover top pattern. You will have totally cut your sweatshirt apart as I've listed right here. You're going to take the ribbings, you're going to cut them off. Don't bother to rip them off, just cut them off. You're going to cut the sleeves out and cut them open. You're going to cut the front separate from the back of the shoulders and the side seams. Now, some things to note here on this diagram, this picture, is that I am do not cut this excess off at the center front edge there along the left side of the picture. Leave all of the width there. You'll take care of that in one of the subsequent steps. And also, this pattern looks very short. That's because, I've noted it right there at the bottom of the pattern piece, I want you to cut the fronts and the backs just as long as you have sweatshirt fabric in order to cut them. Here again, I'll emphasize that the side seams on this are already sewn because I had started making a jacket out of this. Yours would not be, but you can see here that I've got the neckline, the shoulder seams, and the arms side cut for both the front and the back, and I've left the full excess width at the front of the sweatshirt. The sleeve would also be cut out at this point. Be sure to lay your sleeve pieces either right sides together or wrong sides together, and then lay the sleeve pattern tissue onto that sleeve and cut it so that you have a nice sleeve cap. And again, cut it as long as you have fabric for. If you need to tuck in some width at the bottom of that sleeve pattern in order to get it to fit on your available fabric, go ahead and do that. Now I had done some work here before I actually got to the picture of what you see to the side. So as I've listed there, step number 1, before what you see here, I would have done these things. And this is what you'll need to do to stay stitch the necklines of the front and the back. To stitch the shoulder seams right sides together if you want the wrong side of the sweatshirt to actually be featured. As you look at this photograph, please understand that I had done several steps, and I've listed those steps right here for you. Let's go over them. After you've cut the front and the back, you must stay stitch those necklines in order that they don't stretch out on you. So stay stitch the necklines. Then you'll need to stitch your shoulder seams. Now, I decided that I wanted to have as a design element that fuzzy wrong side of the sweatshirt showing on the outside of this pullover top. Since you see the shoulder seams, I decided to do that at the shoulder seams, but not at the side seams. You have to kind of think about it, but you're going to put the wrong sides together in order to sew the seam rather than the right sides as you conventionally do to sew a seam. So that's what I had done here. And then I got out my favorite new creative tool, the Wave Rotary Cutter, and trimmed off both sides of the seam allowance. Now you can go ahead and couch yarn in the well of that seam as I did here, or as I'll show you further on in the process, you could do all of your couching at one time. It's completely up to you. Personally, I think doing it now is probably a better choice because then those yarns and the stitching is all going to be caught in as you apply the collar and the sleeves. So my recommendation would be to go ahead and do this couching right now instead of waiting till later. Um, I know I have an asterisk there saying that you could do it later because I try to always have you do things of the same type all at one time when it comes to rethreading your sewing machine. In this case, I would be using monofilament in the needle, but I'm a lady, I can always change my mind. Let's go to the next slide. Here I am at the retreat center. It was probably kind of late that first night already, but I have put the top on so that I can determine how wide of a center front insert piece I want. Now put your thinking hat on, put your designer hat on. You do not want a really wide piece. I would not have this center front insert come anywhere close to the points of my bust. That would be far too wide. Can you see that those folds there as I folded the fronts back onto the fronts themselves? That is at least an inch, probably even more than that, from my bust points. So what you need to do is decide that, and here I've even made a little blank because you want to record what width that is. Then to that width, you're going to add, I'd say, at least an inch to allow for a ½ inch on each side in order to attach it to the sweatshirting. So this front insert is going to be cut out of the t-shirt, all right? The other thing that you need to think about at this point is how much of that turn back of the wrong side of the sweatshirt do you want to actually leave as a border down each side of that t-shirt center front insert. Now you get to start cutting again, having decided how much of that fold back you want to leave, and I had decided to leave an inch. You'll need to cut off the excess. So just get a good scissors, draw a line, and whack that off. But only do it from one side, because what you're going to do next is using this piece as a template. You're going to lay it the same sides together on the other front and cut off the same amount. That's making use of one thing that you do on one part of a garment, using that as your pattern piece or your template to do the same thing on the remaining side. Now it's time to get out that t-shirt. And here's where you're going to see why it's so good to have bought a t-shirt just as huge as you could possibly buy it. And this time here, it's September 11th when I'm taping this, there are almost giveaways in the stores. And go to the men's section because there's where you're going to get the biggest sizes. You could pick up a t-shirt like this for probably $5. Do you see here that I've got my center front laid there, and I'm figuring out where on this tie-dye design I could get enough length if I still allowed for 4.5 inches all the way across the bottom edge, that bottom hemmed edge, because that's what I need to create the collar. You may have to do some piecing. That would be okay for this center front insert. Probably nobody would ever see the seam, especially if it's a print, in order to get enough length. One thing that I'm going to do now that I'm a Tennessean, and everybody around here are crazy University of Tennessee fans, and the color is orange, I'm going to go to the Kmart that's going out of business, and I'm going to pick up some University of Tennessee um, licensed t-shirts or even jogging pants or something, so that I can do one in orange and have that logo business going up the center front insert of my t-shirt. I think if you create something special and creative and totally different as a sports team fan and wear that to the games, you'll get people knocking you on the shoulder saying, "Where did you buy that? You could go into business." Here we are then. This picture just shows that I have cut off the lower hem of the t-shirt, as I've already stated, and I cut it 4.5 inches wide. Most t-shirts will not have side seams. Some of them will, some of them won't, but this is actually a tube, so that's a good thing. Here we are with one of my favorite notions. It's called Wonder Tape. This sticky stuff has a couple of really good properties. Number one, it has paper on one side, and number two, it will not gum up your needle. Number three, it will wash away. So you can see here that I have used my wave cutter then again down that very centermost edge of my sweatshirt to get that nice wavy edge. I have applied this Wonder Tape right down the edge of that center front insert piece, and now I am lapping that folded piece over, and the tape will stick it together so that next thing I could stitch it together. Now, an optional step before you get to this point would be that you could perhaps serge both of the vertical sides of that center front insert. It's up to you. I, I have a serger. I use my serger a lot, but knits don't ravel. This is a quick and easy down and dirty type pullover top, and actually I had left the foot pedal and cord to my serger at home in Tennessee, so yeah, I wasn't serging this, but that's okay. It's not going to ravel. It's perfectly fine. The other hint I can give you about Wonder Tape is that it does come in kind of a hard plastic little container on this backing, and you want to keep that tape in something that keeps the air away from it. That will keep it in its best condition to make use of it on your next projects. And here you can see in this picture, I am simply stitching those two edges together. I have come up with the place on my presser foot where I'm going to guide the fold of that fabric, and I'm stitching the two together. I would do that down this side, and then obviously, of course, down the other side of this center front insert. And then I have gone ahead, as you can see here, and I have covered up that stitching by couching down some yarn. I love the Oliver Twist hand-dyed yarns. They have plenty of a number of different pretty yarns in a hank, and right now, September of 2017, I've got quite a few of those up on my website at liquidation pricing, so you might want to check that out. When I couch, I use monofilament thread in the needle. I like Wonder Thread from YLI or Monopoly from Superior. I do not like the silky invisible thread. That being said, what I do is I put that in my needle, and by the way, I would be using a stretch size 75/11 needle in order to sew this knit project, not a ballpoint, but a stretch, and that will work fine with the monofilament thread. The big thing is that you want to set your upper tension to a lower number. What number, it doesn't matter. You just need to set it low enough that you don't see your regular polyester bobbin thread peeking up at each side of the zigzag. You're going to be zigzagging over this yarn. Stitch length, I always set it at 3. Stitch width, as ever wide as you need it to be to hop from one side of your embellishing yarn to the other. Plain and simple. Now it's time to fit it again to figure out exactly where you want your neckline to be. My top kind of has a boat-like neck look to it, and you can see here I have my top folded in half at the center back there at the top of the picture and the center front over there at the lower left, and my shoulder seams matching. And now what I'm doing is just simply cutting a curve. I've listed there that I cut off about 1 inch at the center front, 2 inches at the shoulder seam, and about 1.5 at the center back. So yes, you are cutting away that stay stitching, and yes, you really should stay stitch it again. That stay stitching kept that top edge from stretching out of shape, and now you needed to do that once again before you go and add the collar, which will be the next step. Here we are attaching the collar. Now, remember this is the 4.5 inch wide piece from the bottom of the t-shirt. Fat chance that that is going to be the exact same circumference as your neckline. You'll need to measure what your neckline is, perhaps adding another inch, because it's always nice to ease the collar into the garment. Do whatever you need to do seam-wise with that piece from the bottom of your t-shirt in order to make it fit around the neckline. Now, the important thing to point out to you here is that now listen up, I'm putting the right side of a single layer of this collar to the wrong side of the top, okay, of the sweatshirting. You can put that seam wherever you desire. I could see it placed at the center back. I could see it placed at a shoulder seam. Doesn't really matter if it's a print, it's not going to show much. Use your own discretion there. But pin it and then stitch it. I stitched it at about 1/2 inch, and that is simply all there is to the collar. You'll see in a little bit, but it will just flip over and out. The lower edge will stretch. It's just the nicest, quickest, simplest collar I think I've ever come up with on anything. Next for the sleeves. Now it's time to insert the sleeves. I stuck this picture here just to show you, if you haven't cut your notches distinguishable enough to see which one is the double notch, the plateau type shape, which indicates that it's the back of the sleeve, and the single notch for the front of the sleeve, you can always fold your sleeve in half and see which side is taller. The taller side is the back side. Now, listen up, I never, ever, 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 since this wonderful Polish woman showed me how, I never set an ease row of stitching in a smooth set-in sleeve. I only do that if I'm going to be gathering the sleeve into the armhole. I have put my very best, it's the oldest, but my best YouTube video link here, which will show you exactly how I do this. Out of a knit, it's just going to work super, super simple, but please stop here and write this down, and then very carefully go and put that URL into your browser and listen to me show you how I set in my sleeve. This is not a public video on YouTube. I rather have decided to keep it more unlisted and private. This is the gift that I give to people when they go and sign up to be on my newsletter list. If they give me their email, they get the link to this sleeve setting method. It's not one that you're going to see very often, and no, it is not with the sleeve underarm seam not sewn. It's not the flat application. It's different. So go and watch it and smile. Then we want to finish off the bottom of the sleeves. So try your top on, decide how long you want your sleeves to be. When you put on the cuffs in this technique, depending upon how far back you fold the cuffs, You could make the sleeves longer. It's simply up to you, but basically figure whatever length I have on my sleeves of the sweatshirt, that is how long my sleeves will be even when I add the cuff. So we're going to use the hem portion of the short sleeves of this t-shirt in order to create these cuffs. So here you can see that I've cut it off. It's about 4 inches wide, and so just cut off the excess. And then again, in a similar fashion, you're going to have to measure the circumference around the sleeve and make this similar so that they will fit together. Here we are. You can see that I have attached again the right side of the cuff to the wrong side of the sweatshirt. I have matched up the seam allowances, and if you look at the very bottom there, when you seam it together, realize that this is already hemmed, and generally for a nice finish we seam things and then we turn up the hem. In this case, we're making use of the hem. Remember, this is quick and easy. So if you look real close, you can see that I have kind of tacked that seam allowance in place, going one direction down there at the hem line of this cuff. So now you see what's going to happen is that it's going to turn back, as I'll show you here in the next picture. Do you see how that cuff has just turned back? You could decide exactly what length you want this to be. It could be turned all the way back so that that edge of the sweatshirting is right there at the right hand side, the lowermost edge of your sleeve. Or you could have it a little bit longer. If you want it to always stay in place, then tack it down, stitch it in place. This picture really is showing now embellishing with your yarn by couching it right down the middle between the 2 rows of stitching that cover hem that's done commercially to hem the sleeves and the lower body of your t-shirt. It's just giving it some extra. You wouldn't have to do this, but I think it's pretty cool, and we've already talked about how I do that. You can see in the photograph at the right on this slide the nice finish that you have on the inside of the collar, and you'd have the same nice finish on the inside of the cuff because you put the right side of those t-shirt pieces to the wrong side of the sweatshirt part of the top. When you do couching, you've got long ends. When you start, you need to leave about 5 inches, and when you end, leave about 5 inches. And what you can see here is that I'm using the chibi needle. It's got a great big eye on it. It's from Clover. They come 2 to a pack, and it's in a nice tube so you won't lose them. At any rate, you can see that I've threaded them on that needle, and now I'm just going to stick them down in and bury them, stitch across it so that they're secure so they're not going to come undone. And then if you had not previously couched down the front inserts, or if you hadn't previously couched in the well of the shoulder seams, you would do this at that point in order to jazz those up a bit. The hem. Okay. Depending upon, as you fit this top, how long or short you want, how long you have available, you have several options. You could turn it all up and hem it. You could hem it with a zigzag. You could hem it with a big wave stitch. I've got a really great wave stitch on my Brother machine. You could do as I've done, just cut it off with the wave cutter. Do you see the wave cutting there on the sweatshirt part? I could have just cut the wave cut right through the t-shirt portion as well. I'm just giving you a lot of options. That cut edge does kind of roll to the right side, but that's okay. This is a quick and easy, down and dirty type top. That's so much of what's out there, even in the fancy, expensive clothing. So why put a lot more time and effort into it than you probably even have to put into it in the first place? Do it, get it done, have fun, and go on. You'll see here in the next slide that I have stabilized that t-shirt area, and I'm going to turn it up and stitch it. Now, one other note about stitching crosswise on knits. If you just stitch this in by machine, it will ripple. If you like the rippled look, okay, most people don't. You've got to add some kind of stabilization. I like to interface whatever hem allowance I might have with either straight fusible stay tape, or my real preference is to interface the entire hem allowance with a cross grain cut piece of knit fusible interfacing. How I sew on knits and do so with such good results, I have pulled all together in my 3-disc DVD, Stretching Your Knit Sewing Know-How. And that is also at wonderful pricing. Normally $32.95. I've got it down to $25. I've got a lot of these DVDs. I'm not traveling much anymore. So I've reduced my prices to get them into your hands so that you can sew more successfully. They're going to do a lot more good out there than they are in the boxes in my garage. Here you can see how I stabilized that lower t-shirt part, and in the white lettering there, I have explained what I just went through and told you. You can see in this picture those raw edges of that center front insert. Remember, you could have serged that. That would be nice. Not necessary, but nice. And I will tell you that when I was making this top at the retreat, at this point I put it on and it seemed awfully big and boxy. And I thought, am I going to like that? But honestly, my sister, my good sister, said, Londa, just leave it. It's fine. So I did, and guess what? I like it. Here's a picture of me next to the design wall there at the retreat center with my duct tape double, the yarns that I had put up there on the wall for couching so that I didn't get a tangled up mess. Um, you can see the lower edge of my top kind of kicking up there a little bit over my right leg. That's okay. I had not actually made my cuff lay just right there on my right arm, but this was me at the first day of the retreat, and everybody was absolutely amazed that I already had one thing done. Honestly, I think beginning to end, this quick and easy pullover top might take you 2, maybe 3 hours at the very most. You could do the same thing with 2 t-shirts. Have fun with it. For many more sweatshirt jackets, right now I'm selling my 2 books for the price of the Sweatshirt Transformation book. So if you buy the Sweatshirt Transformation book for $27.95, you're actually going to get my book 2 positively, absolutely free. And I did the tiny URL thing there. Write that down, put that into your browser, and the offer, the product at my website will come up for you to purchase this. And then you might want to sign up to get my blog posts. Since I'm not traveling, I'm doing an awful lot of blog writing these days, usually 3 to 4 times a week. This sweet little pumpkin here is my #1 granddaughter, and this is what I made for her first birthday. You would read all about it at my blog. So there's the address. You can follow my blog by either clicking on the little orange icon, putting in your email address to FeedBurner. That will send you an email with the blog post every day that I blog. Or you could subscribe through Blog Lovin'. That's a third party, and you could subscribe to other sewing blogs and have little previews all come to you every morning. Thank you so much for your purchase of this first of many more to come little e-class, quick and easy projects, because life is busy, life is short, we love to sew, but we like quick and easy projects. Be sure to register to receive my newsletter at londas-sewing.com, and I'll see you with my next project. Thank you.